Fam, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the CEO Pulse podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. This is another really cool episode of the Mindset Monday series with my co-host, Justin Thorstad. Yay, Justin, he's the man. If he can do it, no one can. Go, Justin.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
What?
I like it.
It's high standards, bro. Which takes
Not bad for a Monday.
Not bad for a Monday. Let's talk about raising our standards as entrepreneurs, right? A lot of times, like, we get, the moral of the story is really we get what we tolerate when it comes to employees, when it comes to vendors, when it comes to business, when it comes to like the people that we do just network with, the people that we partner up with. We get what we tolerate. As entrepreneurs, it's going to come down to that story because it creates a cap on performance. It creates a cap on expectations, and if we start tolerating things that are not to the standards that we want to operate at or be at, like, we'll start settling with those things and then create this new, lowered benchmark of performance, right? So it's crazy how it works.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you can be a very accommodating person and end up with really, really low standards when you feel and you understand in your heart and you know that you're built for much more than whatever you're operating at.
100%. And then the inevitable delusion of the entrepreneur, the CEO, who is willing to tolerate those things, those standards, and they keep consistently dropping. Then at some point, it's like, oh shit, look at the results.
Right.
And then they have the audacity to go victim to it's them.
Yeah.
Versus taking a look at, like, wait a minute, I'm the one that was accepting these low behaviors and these low results and tolerating it, because that which you tolerate, you cannot change, right? So it's taking a look at what am I willing to accept, and not just externally, right? Because it's easy for us to communicate expectations to partnerships, employees, everyone across the board, all those relationships, and say, this is what is going to happen, and these are the metrics, and this is what you need to hit, or what you need to deliver on. And we can hold people to that. But what about the standards we set for ourselves? What about your bank account? How much money is, like, unacceptable to not have in there? You know what I mean? How much reserves do you have? What about your health? What about your energy, your vitality? What about your relationships? I mean, not externally in the work environment, but at home. What about the relationship with yourself? How often do you fill your cup, charge your batteries, recover? You know what I mean? Like, all these things matter because it determines the version of us that shows up to our business.
Well, and I think we kicked it off really, really fast, right? There's a lot to unpack there. But I think it's one of the things that we often fall short of is looking at the holistic, view, right?
Very much so, yeah.
What kind of standards? We may be a stickler at work, right? And have the best, practices and be really demanding of the team and hold really high standards and do that type of business. But then when it comes to the self, right? The self-love, self-worth, the grace that we have, within us, for us, the standards are really low, right? So it becomes a matter of understanding where we, how we operate from every single, standpoint. It can be a like a big bite, right, to take on. But at the end of the day, like, what are you tolerating within your relationships? What are you tolerating within, of course, your results, right? As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, what are you tolerating with your personal, with your health, with your fitness, with your, nutrition, with, everything, right? Like, it's
100%.
It's it really comes down to us. We may say, right, or tell ourselves a story like, no, I don't tolerate that kind of stuff. But if you're in any particular, state that you don't feel comfortable with, and it's been prolonged, meaning that you've been in it for a while, you're tolerating that. Like, there's something that's happening that's making you stay or stick around, right? Call it an uncomfortable comfort level. Call it, whatever, fear of stepping out and or stepping into and showing up really for the person that you can be. There's so many things that can hold us back, right? But at the end of the day, like, we create stories around the stuff that we tolerate. Oh, I wanted this, but I ended up with this. It's okay though, because it wasn't up to me. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't, whatever. The economy did it. The
Justifications.
we start justifying all this stuff that we know that we don't want for ourselves. We're settling with a level C or D type of life when we want the A life.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh, many, many years ago, I was in this personal development course.
Like 80 years ago?
Jesus.
That was like many.
Yeah, it was many years ago. And anyways, somebody called me out on something, and I legitimately thought like I wasn't at fault or to blame for the situation. And he coined a phrase, Justinfication. And so every time he saw me, he'd call me Justinfication. And I was like, motherfucker. You know what? And like,
I like
it
that
stung.
guy already.
But it was like, damn, that moment though, man, really caused a shift. Like it was an awakening, if you will, a notice, right? Because I was completely unaware of it. Because that's the thing is that, a lot of people are walking around and they're justifying their results. They're blaming external circumstances.
You mean justify?
Nope. No more Justin Fies. And you're gonna make me lose my train of thought. So see, that's an excuse. You don't make me do anything.
Yeah.
But anyways, like they're blaming things externally, but they really just are not consciously aware of how they're operating and the results that it creates, like that correlation between the two. And that's unfortunate. However, you can fix that if you have the desire to elevate your standards for yourself. You know what I mean? Like becoming more self-aware. For example, what's your standard on educating yourself about some insight on how I operate, why I operate that way, and simply looking at operating this way, does it work to get me what I want? Is it working to produce the results that I desire or not? And so, how much do you spend on your education, both money and time? Who do you surround yourself with? Do you have a tribe? Like, are you always learning, or do you think that you're never the problem and everything's out there? If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the market, if it wasn't for the business partner, yada, 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 yada. Like the list goes on and on and on. And if someone's operating that manner, I would say like you're suffering. Because if you think about it, if all of your problems are outside of you, they're external, out of your control, you're literally powerless. Like you have no ability to change any of that. And so a lot of this comes down to having the desire to really want to know what's going on and what's screwing up my results that I expect to see that I'm not getting, and sitting down with a self-assessment to write it out. Like, okay, how do I show up in my health, my nutrition? Like that has a correlation with my vitality and my energy to be able to make it through the day and to show up as the highest and best version of me. What about my primary relationship with my honey? Like, how's that going? What am I tolerating? What am I not willing to?
Yeah.
And how do I want to be treated? How am I treating this person? Like to really dive deep and become aware of what you've been unaware of or conveniently not wanting to take a look at.
Yeah, it's I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier too was that we often look outwards, right? For, okay, I have to tolerate that because it's outside of me, or it's got to be, it gives us this sense of helplessness when it comes to the standards that we may want, right? But I think we have to look at everything inwards first. It's for example, like you're talking about the example in relationships. This weekend, I was driving around with my son. He got a car, right? So we're driving around stick shift, and I'm helping him out and doing the thing, and it's really cool. It's just a great moment, right? It's a great moment. It's a rite of passage. He actually kept the Camaro, so it's like he couldn't be happier, and like he's 17, and really cool space, right? We're having this experience, and then I like it hit me like why is this not happening every single day or more often? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's because I'm tolerating getting caught up with the busy life, the busy work, the busy stuff. So it does come back to me, right? Now,
100%.
What was what were my standards? My standards at work and performing and all that stuff are really high, right? Mm-hmm. But then I got comfortable in certain other areas, right? And
to not show up to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, I'm not showing up how I know I can show up. So at the end of the day, like it really comes down to us, right? When we think of standards, like this is what I want. This is what I want to put out there. But at the end, like what are we taking back And in terms of fulfillment, right? It's not always about a number. It's not always about I don't know, something tangible. It's quality of life. Again, I feel like it's the quality of the time spent, and how we're spending it. I feel like that's really one of the keys to raising our standards.
Well, yeah, because that quality is what drives the fulfillment, right? Like, I know for myself, many years ago, not 80 years, I was focusing on the wrong shit, chasing the wrong thing. And it was, that production, that income, that award, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I pursued that at the sacrifice of everything else that's quality in life, because I thought that those things were going to be fulfilling. I thought that once I get it, then I'll be okay. Then I can relax. Then fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
And what I quickly discovered by hitting those objectives was that, you'd get that thing that you wanted, that goal, you hit it, and then it would feel great for like 15 minutes. And then it's like, oh shit, now what? You know what I mean? Now I got to increase that. Like, what's next? And so taking a look at the quality of the time that you have, and realizing that I get to decide what I do during my time and who I spend it with and what I'm doing during that time. And so what if you could take a look at your life, because you assess everything? What are my standards? What am I willing to tolerate, not tolerate, accept? And I'm going to move forward in elevating my standards, simply because the act of doing so is the fulfillment in and of itself. Like, I'm growing me, I'm expanding me, because the more that I have, the more resourced I am, the more I have to give. Yeah. And I think if you're not giving, like, what the hell is the point of life anyways? To collect things so you can die and not take it with you? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what are you going to leave behind? What kind of impact are you making now?
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, I think it's a transitionary thing, right? We get we go through this state of survival, and then inevitably we're going to get to a space of contribution, because you start asking yourself, what's next?
Yeah.
What's the whole point of this?
Well, and then some people are like, okay, well, I'll contribute and I'll give back when I have, and it's like, no, wrong, because you'll never have enough to give if you're not giving now.
Right.
I firmly believe.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, it's incredible how it works, but it's a matter of intention, right? 100%. Not that I want to, do or leaning into what do you call it, a cliche right there, but it's it's real. It's true. This morning we were going through an exercise with one of my one-on-one students. And we're going through, this strategy and projections for the next 3 years, right? Breaking stuff down, and then we get to a point where we do a basic exercise on BHAGs, so big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And the crazy thing is that a lot of times the bar hasn't been raised, or the standards hasn't been raised, because we're too close to it.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we started stepping away, and when we're doing I'm going through this dynamic where every year we step away from the micro vision into more of a macro view, right? And okay, so we're year 1, year 2, year 3. So we start stepping away, and then this just kind of like it's almost like pouring light into the route or the vision of, in this particular case, the business, right? But we get to this point where we started just kind of mapping out some really, really big potentialities, right? Like outcome goals and targets. And then it's like, man, that's crazy to even think about, something like that. It's crazy to even, just wrap my head around that. Now, the crazy thing was that we were doing all that stuff and then backing into it from results that are happening right now, right? Yeah. So he was well on track to, for that kind of stuff. And the numbers were huge, right? He's well on track right now. Now, if you expand, you continue the same, growth pattern, and stay on the lane per se, right? It's a matter of time before he hits those numbers. So we're going through that, and when he saw it, I was like, man, and I just could see the vision, right, the click, and the standards right there being raised. Like anytime you're not hitting, or you're not in path or in alignment to hit that. It's because you're tolerating something else. Yeah, you're performing, to a standard that it's really at that point it's below you, because you've done way better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. You've already set the bar for yourself, right?
Yeah.
But
So sorry, let me finish off that
sure.
thought. The point to that is sometimes we can be too close to realize that we're settling for standards. We think they're standards. We think they're like, okay, cool. This is the stuff that I'm shooting for. But we need to step back sometimes and get out of that little box, right? To think outside of it. So
yeah, like zoom out, right?
Yeah.
No, that's really good stuff. And I think a lot of people don't have that long-term high elevation vision for what they want because they think that they're not able to get it. And like, that's a standard, thinking small, right? But I love that you did that because everything's created twice. Everything.
Yeah.
This microphone, you know what I mean? It was created first in someone's imagination. And if you can hold it there with faith, belief, and conviction long enough, you'll hold it in your hand.
Yeah.
And so to correlate that into everything else too, it's like, okay, so what are your standards for thinking? Like, how often do you sit down and do a self-assessment of like, okay, what trajectory am I on really based on my results? I mean, because that's the only thing I can judge myself on. And what got me here? And where do I really want to go? And, I think that we should all have some aspirations that are so big that we're a little nervous to tell somebody else. Because they might say, oh, who the hell are you to do that? That's way too big. Like, if you don't have people saying that about your goals, you're probably playing pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is. Now, in our tribe, right, we say a big lofty goal, and it's like, cool, man, like, go for it. Because, of course, you can have that.
Yeah.
And so, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people like that. However, for the masses and everybody else, why not go tell everybody your goals and see how many chuckles you get or laughs at you? Because if you're not going for something big, man, what's the quality of your experience during the time you have left?
It's also interesting how it happens, right? At the beginning, you're going to have a lot of naysayers. You're going to have, people that, just bring doubt to your space.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, but it can be from a space of love even, right? People that love you don't want you to get hurt or don't want you to fail. It's like, oh, shoot for something safer. That was my case. Like I had people around me who I know love me, right? They just kind of, try to hold me back a little bit from the stuff that I wanted to do. And it wasn't from a negative standpoint. However, the impact on it was still the same, right? It was just limiting and imposing a limit on the stuff that I wanted to go after.
But I think that's all part of the process too, because some people, like you see in the memes on Facebook and Instagram all the time, of like, don't tell your goals to people. Like, keep those quiet until you start producing the result, because they'll shit on your energy. And it's like, what? No, that's a victim. That's saying that other people determine what's possible for me because I care more about their opinions and their judgments than I do about my own for myself.
Right.
It's like, no, tell everybody, because if you don't tell everybody, it's going to take you a lot of work and a lot of time to get where you want to go. You tell everybody, and now you have the opportunity for referrals to come in, or so-and-so to be talking to somebody, and they're like, oh my gosh, have them call me. And you have connections, and you build your network, and you get there faster. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it's also how accountability works, I feel. You know what
100%,
I mean?
yeah. If nobody knows what you're up to,
it's easy. It's easy to like, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yep. And tomorrow never comes.
Tomorrow never comes. So unless you have this like really strict, like you're internally wired for accountability, right?
Yeah. And if you just said that, oh, that's me, you're probably not accurate. You know what I mean?
There's got to be moments where you don't want to.
You don't feel like it. It's uncomfortable, blah, 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 blah. So you tell some people what you're up to, and they're like, how's it going?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they know if you're full of shit and you're lying to them. So don't.
Yeah.
Just own it.
So think about, understand where the standards are at, right? First. Where are your standards at? Are those self-imposed standards, or are those standards that you borrowed from somewhere else that were, inherited standards? Yeah, that are outdated. That they're limiting you to fully perform on anything, right? Or fully be on anything. I mean, again, going back to relationships, going back to health, going back to financials, going back to whatever, right?
Yeah, everything gets scrutinized, so to speak. You got to assess it.
Yeah, I found, and this can be an unpopular opinion, but I found that for me, getting the gray out of the standards is an important thing, right? For example, if it's a matter of working out or fitness or something like that. Okay, like 6 times a day I'm at the gym, right? It's a number. It's a 6. Like, I know that if I didn't go 6 times a day, 6 times a week, not a day, 6 times a week, to the gym, like I operate below my standards on that.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's one, for example. Financials is another thing. So there's certain things, certain targets that I like to hit and just kind of keep me on level, right? As opposed to, I worked enough. I worked out enough. I ate well enough.
Justification.
Justification. So
why I gave him that ammunition, I'll never know.
I don't know.
I did it for the benefit of our viewers and listeners.
I feel like you should know me better than that,
man.
So,
you know what unring a bell.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's, figure out what those standards are for you, right? Like if it's, I don't know, if it's in the business, if it's on the emotional relationship side, with your wife or husband or whatever, right? Like, okay, cool. We go on 2 dates, 3 dates, and make that a standard. It's not that hard to create numbers and create some type of pragmatism to the stuff that we want to hit. And again, it's not that you want to be super robotic, right, all the time. It's not about that. It's about accountability. It's about understanding where you're at. When you have something that you can actually measure, you can go back to, you leave the subjectivity out of it, and it's no longer I think I'm doing good.
Yeah. Well, and you can't measure something you don't track, right? Yeah. And you can't track something you don't set an intention. So
standards are just like that.
And so the other thing too about, maybe there's some standards I know that I need to increase, but I don't really want to because it's uncomfortable. Like that's gold too, because now you get to take a look at, okay, what's my relationship to this? Might I be looking at it incorrectly? And what's a healthier way I can look at this? Like diet, nutrition, and working out. Like why the hell would I want to do that? I'm good enough. Well, because when I show up, I'm done with all my workout and everything else, my morning practice, and I suit up to show up to work, like an elevated version of me comes forth. I'm in a better mood. Do you know what I mean? I'm less reactive and more proactive and more objective, less subjective. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm of more value because I worked out in the morning.
Yeah.
So correlate, why would I want to do this instead of the old lens of like, that seems uncomfortable. I don't really want to. What's the point? It's like you got to re-enroll yourself into your own greatness.
That's important, man. That's very, very important, right? And sometimes there's nobody else to remind us that we're the shit. It's up to us. It really comes down to us. If you don't give yourself the time to understand or to even contemplate, right, what you're dealing with, what you're putting up with on a regular basis, there's no way of improving on it or building yourself out of that, stagnation sometimes, right? It's easy to stagnate when we're tolerating that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, you're going to get what you tolerate.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally.
So with that being said, I kind of, gave you a little bit of an insight as to how I look at the stuff that I tolerate, right, that I put up with. I like to be pragmatic on stuff for the sake of benchmarks, for the sake of understanding that I'm moving forward. And it's just easier for me in terms of self-accountability. I think of standards as lifelong goals. A standard is a way to operate. Right? A goal is something that you get to, you crush it, you achieve it, and then you create a next goal. A standard is it's always going to be there.
It's a way of being.
It's a way of being. It's a way of just, becomes, your MO for behavior. It's how you perform, right? At the end of the day.
It's a version of you that shows up. Yeah.
How do you identify your standards? How do you do checks and balances on them, per se?
My answer is maybe not as duplicatable, but I'm just very self-aware and I know myself really well. And moment by moment, what I like, I don't want to address that right now for X, Y, and Z reasons. Like I know I'm going to have to eventually. So I'm always paying attention. But the key is, how do I become aware of what I'm unaware of? Like my blind spots, right?
Yeah.
And this is a topic for a whole nother episode. But basically, I take a look at if I'm irritated and frustrated about some results, I get to take a look at not why is that happening per se, although there could be some value in that. But if I'm experiencing frustration, irritation, it's because I'm frustrated and irritated with myself.
Yeah.
And why is that? That's where the self-assessment is. And I think it really just comes down to not something so grandiose and scientific, but more of just like, I want to know what the hell's going on with me that I'm not seeing right now. And so I'm going to take time to go sit down with blank paper and a pen, a meditation, and just quiet myself first and foremost to get objective, to get present, to remind myself of who I am, what I am, and that I love me. and I'm going to sit with it. And man, every single time the answer becomes so abundantly self-evident. It's just obvious. But you got to create time and space to be able to hear that when you ask the question.
Yeah.
And people don't do that because they rather distract themselves with all kinds of things, social media, Netflix, whatever. And it's like, that's just a justification because you don't want to address what's really going on, because it might be you and you have to own that result. And they already have enough evidence to beat themselves up over all kinds of other ridiculous stuff. So it just comes down to truly the desire to want to grow. And if you have that desire, then you prioritize things in alignment with it, like creating time and space to be with just you, quiet, still. Ask the question, still enough to hear the answer.
I like that, man. It can be often, I think, easier said than done for somebody who's busy. Or quote unquote busy.
Yeah, and I'm fucking busy.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's always time for me.
They say, I mean, if, do it for 10 minutes, right? In the morning at least. If you can't do it for 10 minutes, do it for an hour.
Yeah, you know what I mean? People say you don't have time. Like, you got more time than you know. You just don't manage yourself very effectively during that time that you've allotted.
Creative avoidance, man. It's an easy thing to go back to. I know, like, when I'm stressed, when I'm like feeling a little cloudy on direction, on this, this next steps to take, or whatever it is, right? I start, getting in or falling into the creative avoidance trap.
Yeah, sure.
I get noisy with busy work. I get, I don't know. We'll schedule a lunch that it's not, whatever, right? And it's that whole prioritizing thing just goes out the window.
Yeah.
Not clarity, or having not having clarity over certain areas can make you fall into those gaps. When you understand what you put up with, when you understand your standards, and you understand what your the way that you're going to operate and perform, you go back to that, man. You go back to that. Okay, cool. Let me, like, I don't know. One of my standards is I set up 3 things every morning, right? For example, like these are non-negotiable. I got to wrap this up today. These 3 things, and then I'm going to call my day productive. So I knock those out, and I've over the years I've gotten myself to a point where, like, I'm pretty decent at it. Every now and then I'll I'll leave one for tomorrow or something like that because I ran out of time, or it's been it dragged, or
took longer than you thought. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Something, right? But it's the exception, not the norm. So it became a standard of operating for me. When that wasn't in place, it was so easy for me to just deviate from anything.
Well, if you're not clear, that means you don't really know what you're going to say yes to. And if you don't know what you're committed to saying yes to, you don't know when to say no.
Yeah.
And so you'll say yes to everything instead of, no, I won't take that lunch appointment because I have this priority.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in order to say yes to something, you have to say no to something else.
Right.
Right. And so, but a lot of people like to live in that fog, because if I get clear, then I'm going to be prioritized, and I'm going to have to take responsibility for the result. And I don't want to, because that's scary.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just decide to not decide and be confused.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to tell myself the bullshit of, I'm a creative thinker, and I like to do things on the fly. Like, no. I am a creative.
Spontaneous.
I'm spontaneous. I am a creative thinker. However,
that is creative.
I was full of shit.
Yeah, totally.
It was just I found it hard for me to do, like, I don't know, commit to something, right, and then run it out, and then see it. A lot of it, honestly, at the beginning was because I had so many ideas and so many different areas that I wanted to tap into. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really picking one lane and sticking to it. I mean, you remember that?
Oh, yeah. So divided focus, and just not much gets done, but you're busy as hell.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, my standards were different. I was tolerating that kind of stuff within me.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't even an outside thing. So when I would look back and look at my results, it's like, shit, man, this is the kind of stuff that I'm tolerating. This is the kind of standards that I'm operating to.
Yeah.
I'm allowing a lot of things to flow in from different aspects and not seeing or not giving conclusion to the important stuff. And at that point, honestly, I had so many things in the fire that I didn't know what was important.
Yeah. Well, how could you? You know? Yeah. I found myself there many times last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Interesting. Awesome. So ask yourself, like, what kind of standards are you tolerating, right? How can you raise those standards? And and I think more importantly, you know, whether or not those standards are self-imposed, or is that something that you came up with? Is that something that you gave it, you know, creative thought and you have energy behind it? Or is it something that you just borrowed and, okay, this is how I operate because it's what I've learned over the last, you know, 10, 15, 20 years?
It's who I am.
It's who I am.
Stop it.
I was born into this world.
Yeah.
Of shitty standards. So we have the right. We have the right. We have the ability. We have the blessing, right, to be able to create and define our lives that way.
Man, every single one of us has the privilege and sole right to change our mind about anything at any time.
Yeah,
like 100%. And if you're not utilizing that power of choice and decision, and you're just being blown in the wind, you know what I mean, by other people's opinions, judgments, standards, what a low quality experience. Like, there's an immense power in getting clear and deciding. And people like to go to, I don't know. It's like just a go-to chicken exit. You know what I mean? You ask a question, even of yourself. Why do I do this? Or how come I'm not doing that? And if you just allow yourself to not say, I don't know, because you do know, if you were to sit and think about it. And why don't you just pick anything? Just decide something. Move forward with that. And if you don't get the result, adjust from there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have all the answers right up front to everything. You got to get into action and learn and resource yourself. So that's one thing I think in raising your standards and you know, what you tolerate is when you reflect on these things, just delete that from your vocabulary, that statement, I don't know. It's bullshit. And again, that's another creative outlet to stay in the fog and not have to take responsibility. So ownership.
Well, I mean, standards is the key to direction in life, I think, right? Goals,
I like that.
Goals can point you and be, you know, they can be a beacon, but the standards are the vehicle to drive, you know, the machine that you're driving to get there. So think about that when you're just kind of, you know, flying.
Man, you finally said something of value today.
Once a year, man. Once a year. Right. With that being said, I mean, that was solid.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Justin, where can somebody get a hold of you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. JustinThorstad.com. Anywhere on social media, YouTube at Mindset Coach JT, or my cell phone, 602-348-8534.
So if you don't use his number or reach out, there's no justification for any
shitty results.
Shitty results that may come from not doing so. So, all right, fam, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. It's a two-way street. Remember that. Let us know your comments, your thoughts. If you're finding value on this, do us a big favor. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Send it out to somebody who you think might benefit from listening to us. And keep the conversation coming. Right? We appreciate. We like all the comments and the feedback that we get from the audience. We're doing this for you guys. And at the end of the day, it's also pretty self-serving too, because I mean I learn a ton every time we just expose and create awareness within us to put out there to the world. So with that being said, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Stay focused. You got this. Let's go.